Welcome to our podcast. Seriously, it's not therapy, where we launch into an unscripted chat that has the potential to go very deep. And here with me, of course, is my co-host, Tanya. Welcome, Tanya.
Hey Brenda, great to see you. How are you?
Oh, I'm very good. I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. Me too. No idea what's coming at me.
That's the beauty of it. But before we start, I would love to actually hear an update from you because we've had a few chats about the manifesting,
Hmm.
and it sounds like you've got a bit going on. Give us an update.
Yes, and I've been waiting for this podcast to share it with you actually, because on our very first podcast about manifesting, and I set myself the challenge to rewire my brain around networking and putting myself out there. Because as I said to you, it's not something I do naturally. People think I'm an extrovert. I'm actually an introvert. Anyway, cut to the chase. I was at a conference this week, and on the Wednesday night, it's the welcome drinks, and it's my worst nightmare. Walking into several hundred people, I don't know them, and I need to start chatting. And what was really interesting was noticing my mindset beforehand. I started procrastinating. It was in the Hunter Valley, so it was cold. I had jeans on and a jumper, woolen jumper, like I was cozy. But I'm telling
Mm.
myself, as I'm going to walk out the door, no, you need to dress more professionally. You should change your clothes. Oh, but I'm warm in this. It's cold. And this backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. And that's my mindset. Procrastinating, it's fear, it's all of those things around making excuses, right? So I knew what my brain was doing. Cut in. I'm just like, shut up, walk out the door, you're going. And I did. I'm like, doesn't matter what I'm wearing, I'm out the door. I head over there, and then I see that one of my friends is there. I'm like, oh my God, fantastic. So I walked into the room, found her. She introduced me to people. That was great. Ended up running into people I actually knew and that I'd worked with, which was awesome. But here's the serendipity in action, which just trips me right out, right? You know that underneath this challenge I put to myself about getting myself out there and networking and selling and blah, 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 was because I'm wanting to really push the new business of mine, which is a particular program that I run. I've run it for like 10 years, but I'm wanting to really start to push that.
Yeah.
One of my colleagues who I'd worked with previously, he had a few drinks. So he was like, you need to go and chat with Tanya. So this lady comes over. I've never met her before. And she's like, oh, he said I need to come and chat with you about XYZ. I'm like, no, 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 that's not me. That's my friend here. But she was busy chatting with someone else, which meant that we had a conversation. Lo and behold, what does she need in her business? The human factors training that I'm setting myself up to feel more confident
Um,
networking around and selling. And we have this great conversation around it. And as we're having that conversation, my mindset's going serendipity, serendipity. I've set this up. There you go. It was phenomenal.
wow. It's
Phenomenal.
always phenomenal and amazing how this stuff works. And
Mm.
it's interesting. I mean, my experience with my manifesting has not been quite that much fun. However, bit of a twist on mine too, because I thought, okay, I have to say I've been a little bit distracted to do anything around the attraction, but I did put it out there. So something will be bubbling away.
Hmm.
But I did have, so I've got some work stuff going on. I'm looking at a few new opportunities, and both of those opportunities came through men who I know really, really well and respect. So, I'm kind of attracting men in a different way, Tanya.
Hey, as long as we're attracting men, that's all that matters, right? It just means you're on the right path. That is awesome. I love that. I love that. But you're also
Oh,
doing the whole rewiring your brain around it
so
as
much,
well. And I
so
think that's a
much.
safety thing where if we're attracting men, but it's for a work perspective, your brain's setting up that meaning around it that it's safe to attract men. You're doing it with work first, and then we know that's safe. The next step's going to be much easier. Same way,
No.
it will be. Same way I'm retraining my brain that networking is fun. I had so much fun at that conference, and I pushed myself, really pushed myself out of my comfort zone to go up to people that I don't know, and just have these great conversations. And I had a ball. So again, rewiring, networking is fun. Networking is fun, and it worked.
And I really like that because you and I both know that what we focus on will grow. And that I'm sure that'll come through in our discussion today because I'm going to start with a question. So
Mhm.
you will see, I'll do a bit of an intro, Tanya, so that you get the gist of what I'm wanting to look at today. It's a topic we both
Mhm.
know a lot about. But I wanted to open up by asking anyone who's listening a question. And I know that this has been happening a lot for me the last few weeks. And that is, have you ever caught yourself stuck in your own head? So overthinking something,
Mhm.
it's quite a common
Mhm.
thing. And,
Mhm.
maybe someone said something that felt a bit off, or you're going to your networking, or I've gotten all hooked up in what's wrong at work instead of what's right. And, we just
Mhm.
start this festering process in our head. And
Yeah.
often before we realize it, we've made up this whole story about what things mean. So
Mm.
I really want anyone listening to let that land. That
Mm.
whole, where have you made up a story? Where have you overthought things, or just what comes to mind for you? Because we all do it. And the truth is that our thinking is incredibly powerful. It's not just background noise. It actually influences how we feel, how we
Mm.
show up, how you showed up to the networking event, how we respond to people. If we're busy in our head, we're not necessarily going to be completely in the moment and connected to someone and responding from that place. So a lot of the time, our thinking can drive so much, and it can go onto autopilot. We're not even aware of it. So
Mm.
I've been studying thoughts and thinking for over 20 years. I know you've done a lot of work on this. I mean, we're both development people, learning and development. So of course we're going to look at this stuff. It's very current. When
Mm.
I had my own business, I actually used to the 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 first module of any training was around self-awareness and thinking. And I'd actually send people away with homework to observe and reflect on their thinking. And that wasn't to judge it, it's just to
Mm.
notice it, because
Mm.
that's when we can notice how often we're repeating the same thoughts, the I don't like networking, the all of those things. And we have this internal voice running that same old script. And until we see it, we can't change it.
Mm.
So what actually made me want to focus on this podcast was when I was listening to Joe Dispenza, as I do quite a bit, and he said something that I went, oh, I like the way you put that. And it was that thoughts are like footprints in our mind. And it's
Mm.
very, very true. And I made a video on this a while back to explain neuroplasticity, so our ability to change and rewire our brain, our thought patterns, etc. And I used the example of walking over tall grass, and I may have used it in a previous podcast, I can't recall right now, but how the first time we walk and we lift our foot and we put it down over the tall grass, it might leave a bit of a dent. But if we go backwards and forwards over that same exact pathway, we eventually find it much easier because the grass flattens. And our brains work the same way. So we can create those mental shortcuts. So,
Mhm.
Tanya, I'm really keen to have a bit of a chat about this idea of the stories we tell ourselves, the ones we don't even realize we're repeating, why they stick, and how we can maybe change them. And this, it's like, seriously, it's not therapy. It
Yes.
just fits so well here, but
Mm.
it might help those listening to catch themselves, just become more aware and have a bit of a look. So what I'd love to start with is a question for you, Tanya, uh, about, what's perhaps a story that you've caught yourself believing turned out to be totally made up? Is there anything? I'm sure there's
Oh, look,
lots.
there's heaps. There's heaps and heaps and heaps. And we can talk about, the networking one, but I don't want to use that as an example because I'm consciously rewiring that, but also it's not that deep. And I would rather share an example that's a really clear example that we're either, constantly rewiring our brains, which is what I'm doing around, networking, or we're unconsciously reinforcing those beliefs. So I'm going to be a bit vulnerable here.
Yep.
Um, because if I share something that's personal, I'm vulnerable, then hopefully it will help other people to unpack where they're doing similar things, because we all do it, like all
Mm,
of us do. So
mm.
most of my followers on Cosmic Queen know that, I went offline for a little while there. And that was because I'd gone through so much trauma. And one of those trauma experiences I will share, because it really, really impacted my thinking and how I thought about myself. And this is just one piece of trauma over those couple of years, because there was several. And I'd been in this horrendous situation working in health where the bullying was too much. And it was too much to the point where I had to get lawyers involved. And that says a lot,
Oh,
because I'm
yeah.
not someone that fights. Normally I'll just walk away, because my thinking is, this is toxic, this is not good for my mental health. I'm not going to stay in a situation like this. But the bullying was so horrendous. It was really, really impacting my mindset. I knew I had to do something. It's like, this is not okay, the situation that I'm in, hence getting the lawyers involved. And that was a 2-year process.
Wow.
And throughout those 2 years, anytime I'd get an email from, my contacts in health about the situation, it was like I had PTSD, because they were accusing me of being the worst employee under the sun because I refused to return to work. And this whole, you are refusing to return to work, making out that, I'm this horrendous person. But I'm really clear, this is the bullying. They wouldn't even investigate it properly. So when they send you these emails telling you what a terrible person are, you're refusing to return to work, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that, it really impacts your thinking. And the stories that they're telling me, even though I knew I wasn't a bad person, I was telling myself other stories like, how can I get another job? I'm not worthy. How can I get a reference now? I'm not worthy. It was this whole, I'm not worthy, and being worried that this was going to come back at me in some way, which really impacted my confidence, my motivation to go after what I want. Because the stories that you're telling yourself is that, in some way, you're just not good enough, because they're telling you you're not good enough. And even though you know that how they treated you was not okay, the way that they react, particularly when you get legals involved, it gets really nasty. The stories that I'm so conscious of those stories, and it took me quite some time to get myself out of that rut. And that's what I was telling myself, what I mentioned at the start, that you're either constantly rewiring or unconsciously reinforcing. And so I knew that I was unconsciously reinforcing all those, terrible things that they
Mm,
were saying, even though I knew they weren't true. What they were saying wasn't true, but I was telling myself other stories.
mm,
And that really got me in a really, really bad place.
mm,
It really felt like PTSD. I would have these horrendous panic attacks whenever I would get an email, or I'd have to go back to my lawyer and would have to respond with the same information. Like, it was quite
mm.
horrendous. And
Tough.
what I guess got me out of that was knowing that, our thoughts can reshape our brain. And I've done this before. After I'd had a head injury, which I'd shared on another podcast, I had to retrain my brain to get my memory back. And so your brain learns what you practice. And me, feeling so horrendous, I also know that retraining our brain and the whole neuroplasticity thing, it's not just what's in our brain, it's in our bodies as well,
Yes.
because it's our thoughts, it's our emotions, it's everything that we think and feel, it's in our bodies. So I started doing things to work on myself as a whole person to be able to overcome that thinking. And it is a process. And I share that because it took me a while, because that trauma was a couple of years, and it took me a
Yeah.
while to really step out of that. But it came back to mindset and me putting things into practice to treat myself as a whole, to
Mm.
step out of that.
Yeah, and that's a big story in the 2 year
Mm.
time frame. I mean, the time that you had to reinforce. And I grabbed my pen and I wrote something down. And I know you would have learned used this in your learning environments because this stuff's been around for decades. The fact that we have a thought which leads to a behavior, which gives us the evidence to reinforce what we were thinking. And we get
Yeah.
this loop and loop and loop. And what you've done here is obviously disrupted it. What are some of the tools that you used? I mean, we can talk about self-care. I mean, that's
Mm,
something that we can
mm,
try and do. But you and I both know, and we've had conversations over time, that when things are tough like that,
mm,
we don't necessarily want to look after ourselves. So, what are some of the things you did?
mm. No, it's a good question. So simple things like going and having a massage. And I found that massages were really, really good. And yoga,
Mm,
because we store trauma in our hips and we've got to release that trauma. One yoga class, and the guy that runs it here locally, like I just love him because one yoga class I was clearly processing and because he was doing lots of hip work, not obviously not knowing that, I had a lot in my hips that needed to be released. But that whole class, I cried through
yeah,
that whole class because it's a release from your hips. And what I love about him is no one came up to say, "Oh, Tanya, you okay?" There was some nice smiles from him, but he knew what was going on. So he just quietly, it was made it okay for me to cry through the whole class because he knew what was happening and he gave me permission to do that. So
mm,
that was one thing. So the whole self-care piece is super, super important. So lots and lots of self-care. And your brain learns what you practice. So the more
yeah,
things that you put in place to look after yourself, the more you focus on, you see more of it. So the
mm,
more I started to focus on, okay, I need to look after myself and I have to put myself first,
mm,
it opens up and you start to see things that you need to do. And the more that I worked on what was in my body that needed to be released, that's when I really felt the shift in my mindset. And I was able to then work on my mindset around that.
And actually, this is a really good point. I was just saying to my sister, we went for a walk this morning, and I've had all this work stuff going on, and I'm storing it in my hip. But I've also I had a pain turn up in my knee and my lower
Oh,
back, and of course, I know it's all left side. It's all about direction, and
yep.
and I kind of love that my body steps up to show me what's going on. And I
Yes.
think this is perhaps a great direction to take this because it's not always easy to notice what's going on in our mind. It's not always easy to pause when stuff's going on. I mean, if I've paused too much lately, I've cried because it
Yep.
is big stuff, so I've filled it in with exercise and working and
Yep.
eating. Eating's a good one. Uh, till I
Oh,
saw
I
a photo,
know.
till I saw a
Mm,
photo of myself presenting last week,
mm.
and it's like, whoa, where did that little belly come from?
Yes.
Anyway, I digress. But so let's talk about some of the things that we can perhaps notice in our body
Mm,
and
mm,
what's your go-to to pause long enough to not
mm.
ignore what's going on in your body, but notice it and maybe explore what it's about.
Yeah, like, it's a really good question because quite often we learn through others, other people being a mirror for ourselves, right? And I get it a lot in readings where I'll be giving somebody a reading and they'll have this massive aha moment, which is
Mm,
fantastic. But a massive aha moment doesn't bring in change and it doesn't rewire our brain. And so I will follow up that massive aha moment. What are you going to do differently? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to put in place? And I'll make some suggestions. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do that. And Some people follow through on those things, other people don't.
Mm,
And I use that as a mirror because I can instantly see you've had your aha moment, but you're not going to do anything, which means that that opportunity to rewire your brain doesn't happen because one aha moment doesn't rewire your brain. Your brain needs repetition, repetition, repetition,
yeah.
repetition. And then we're able to rewire our brain. So when I see that when I'm in a reading, after the reading, I'll stop and go, okay, where have I had an aha moment and I haven't done anything? I haven't followed it up.
Yeah.
And instantly I'll get, Tanya, you should be doing this, 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 and this. And then I make sure I go and do it and I put a plan in place.
And that's where the courage comes in, right? Doing something
Yep.
differently.
Yep.
I do have a thoughts journal process, and listening to you, I will actually I'll put a link to it in the notes that go with this episode, because one of the things I had people do, which is really easy, and this is when we really haven't tried this before. We haven't thought about bringing our thoughts to the front of our mind before, and that is
Mm,
noticing your first thought in the morning can actually be a really powerful exercise. And I'd
mm,
get people coming back into the room a couple of weeks later, and there were things like how much I don't want to go to work. So that wasn't really great. Um, or picking up my phone straight away, or, I'm hungry. There were all sorts of things, or I'm interrupted by children first thing in the morning. But if we actually just allow ourselves to do that over and over again, we start to notice what we
mm,
are thinking. And, my ideal, as is no secret, and I know you do this too, is to think about what I'm grateful for, because the way our thinking is in the morning really does set up our day. So if we wake up feeling grateful, so for example, me with my work lately, not enjoying my work, how easy can you imagine it's been for me to go to work and look for everything that's wrong with my
mhm,
job? And I've been really
mhm,
conscious of it. But even me, who's been practicing this for decades, found it
mm,
really hard to turn that round. So it's kind of
mm,
like that gratitude piece, but just that pausing long enough to notice what you're thinking, and then reflecting at the end of the day. If that's
mm.
easier for you, just reflect and have a think about what you're thinking. What's some other ideas that you would put in there to help people start simple, start small?
Yeah, it's that knowing that the more the things that we focus on, we see more of it, which
We
is
do.
exactly what you've said. So if you're not happy at work and your brain is consumed with thoughts around that,
Yep.
that's all you're going to see. And we've all done that, right? We've all
Yeah.
done that. And so I know I start to catch myself when I get worried about, oh, someone said this or someone said that, and I worry that, it means something that it doesn't mean, and blah, 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 blah. But then I catch myself and I will say to myself, Tanya, is this really what you want to fill your brain with? And I'm
Yeah.
getting really disciplined with that. Do I really want to spend my Sunday afternoon worrying about this? Or would I rather spend my Sunday afternoon doing, a multitude of other things which are way more fun? And
Mm,
so it's catching yourself because it's stopping your brain unless we consciously stop it from thinking about things or focusing on things that are negative.
mm,
We're not going to catch it. And the thing is, right, when we're focusing on the negative or the things that worry us, it's our brain's way of saying this is not safe. And whether
yeah.
that's real or not is another thing. But it's our brain's way of saying, this is not safe. Don't go there. Don't go there. Don't go there. It's our brain's way of trying to protect us. And so, coming back to what you said earlier, it's the hypothalamus. That's the part of the brain that stores memories. And so, if we've
Absolutely.
got a negative association, which is what happened to me in health, I'd see a memory, my hypothalamus is activated. It's that memory, and so I know we've talked about this before, but having the amygdala hijacked because the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain, the logical thinking, it's completely bypassed by our hypothalamus, which stores the memories. And knowing that means that when we have these spirals of I'm worried about this and I'm worried about that or blah, 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 like I said, it's our brain's way of saying this is not safe. But if we know we're doing it, we can catch ourselves.
Oh, and there's the chicken and egg, right? It's like which one comes first. You said that
Yes.
so well, and if anyone wants to investigate it, it's so easy to do the research on these parts of the brain,
Mm.
because we really do. It's really helpful, even to sit and okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's probably stored away.
Mm.
I mean, we could, if we get into the neuroscience, we'll go nuts. So we'll do that on the next one. Hey, we'll do that on the next one
Yep.
because my
Yep.
head's starting to fill up with intuition and explaining that from a neuroscience
Mm.
perspective. So maybe we'll do that next time. But look, the big thing I think, especially after the few weeks I've had, look, us looking at our manifesting and getting back into listening to Joe Dispenza and hearing his gold nuggets is,
Mm.
oh my gosh, let's share this because here's two people, you and me. We're sitting here, we've known about this stuff for a long time, and we can still have our challenges. We still
Oh,
know that we have to,
absolutely.
yeah, we
Mm.
have to
Mm.
pause and we have to notice what we notice and choose whether we are going to continue down that thinking path or change it. So it's something that it's never done. It's not a one and done. It's like going to the gym. You're not going to go
Yeah.
to the gym and be toned for life. It's an everyday, take a piece of action, you know,
Yeah.
notice what's going on in there.
Yeah. You know what my new phrase is? Because I'm using it in a program I'm developing, but it really stuck with me is the phrase moments that matter.
I love that one.
Yeah. And so when we catch ourselves, it's a moment that matters. So how are we going to reframe it? How are we going to work with it? How can we get something fabulous out of it rather than the opposite? And so I'm starting to, because that phrase has come in, I'm just quite obsessed with it. I love it. Looking throughout the day, how we can turn things around. Maybe it's a meeting we don't want to attend, or someone that we have a difficult conversation with, or something where our brain is going, no, 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 I don't want to do this. How can we turn that difficult conversation into moments that matter? So we're getting something really valuable out of it. And that's a really powerful way to rewire our brain. So I've been playing with that recently. And like a difficult conversation I had to have, I walked away. I hugged the person afterwards. Like it ended up being this fantastic meeting, but I was dreading it. But I'd changed my mindset around it
Yeah.
and wanted to get an outcome that it was a moment that matters. So it
Mm.
completely changed that conversation. But the other thing I did as well, and this comes back to oh God, what's his name? Jefferson, someone is this hot, you know, attorney from the US. Like I love his podcast. It was funny because I was listening to his podcast in the car. You can't even see him. And my daughter was in the car and she's like, this is that really hot guy, isn't it? I'm like, yep. She's like, oh, I could listen to him for days. He's got this great voice. Anyway, I'm diverting. One of the things that he talks about is that if you have to have a difficult conversation with someone that either you don't like or you think they don't like you, go into that meeting assuming that they really like you.
Yeah.
Because if you go into that meeting thinking they really like me, it actually changes how you have that conversation. And so I did that with this conversation. Now I'm going in thinking they think I'm the bee's knees. And I did notice a change in myself in how
Yeah.
I handled that conversation and then was able to turn it into a moment that mattered.
Oh,
Really
I love
interesting.
I love this. So as you know, I used to coach a lot of leaders, and I talk about, if you're going in to have a conversation with a team member who has either been difficult or not performing or pushing all your buttons in a negative way,
Mm.
find one, ideally more things that you really, really like or admire or value in that person. Keep them front of mind and walk into the meeting with that because
Yes.
they will feel it. Even if
Yes.
they don't know that that's what you're thinking, they will feel it. And what's the
Mhm.
opposite? They're going to feel that negativity, be defensive. There's our we're just so powerful. We are just
Mm,
so powerful from one thought to a million thoughts, and we can choose different pathways. And
mm,
it's what I love about doing this podcast is it's a reminder for me, and I know you'll feel the same, to keep this stuff top of mind, to
mm,
observe our own thinking, and
mm.
remember how powerful we are.
Absolutely, because when we do it, right? So that conversation I had um, at the conference, like one of the first conversations, I'm like, there's serendipity in play when we work with our mindset and work with the things that we know are challenging for us. And we can see that we are so powerful. We can turn those conversations around. We can change things with our mindset. I don't know, it still spins me out, like the way the world works
Yeah,
and the serendipity and how things really are designed to work in our favor when we put ourselves out of our comfort zone and do these things that we may have perceived to be difficult, but we tell ourselves, like I said with networking, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I had an absolute ball
yeah,
with the conversation, the difficult conversation. They think of me so highly, I'm the bee's knees,
yeah.
turned that conversation around. So we have so much power to transform these scenarios when we tap into it, but it's the neuroplasticity piece. We can rewire our brains by really pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. And didn't we talk about this in one of our other podcasts? And I'm not going to remember the part of the brain because it's some weird part, but we can make that part of our brain bigger by doing these things that we find challenging. The more we push ourselves out of our comfort zone and do these things we find challenging, the part of our brain that's associated with that, which has got the mid, I don't know, it's the mid, it starts with the word mid. Um, that part of our brain gets bigger, which means that every single time after that, where we need to push ourselves out of our comfort zone to do something, it gets easier.
Oh,
And
so
so
does.
athletes, that part of their brain is massive.
Mm,
It's massive. And so
absolutely.
that's motivation. And I find that to me, I find that really, really, really motivating that the more I do this, the easier it's going to get.
Oh, look, absolutely. And they talk about people learning the piano by playing it or people visualizing them. So there's so much we can do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put two things I'm going to connect here, the thoughts journal, but also the little video on neuroplasticity, because it gives a little visual to one path becoming weaker and another path becoming stronger. And some of
Yeah.
us need that. And even if you watch it over and over, as an exercise to remind you,
Yeah.
what's one thing you are going to, maybe a little challenge you'll give yourself for the next few weeks, or something you're going to try or do or commit to?
Hmm. I'm quite obsessed with these moments that matter at the
Yeah,
moment. Yeah,
yeah,
quite obsessed with that. So I guess extending that because I've been looking at from a holistic view during the week, quite high level, which are the moments that matter, but maybe just, I don't know, make it a greater focus, I guess. Greater
mm,
focus.
Oh, the ideas that will come to you will be amazing.
Mm,
Absolutely. Well, I've got a interesting conversation to have with my manager. So it will happen within the next week or so. And
nice,
I'm going to write a few little really positive reminders based on our conversation today to look at
nice.
before I go into that conversation, which will be really nice. Yeah. And I'll
Love
let you know
it.
how it goes.
Please do. Please do. I love it. That's awesome, Brenda.
So there you go. There's a podcast episode from two everyday women who
Mm,
face all the same stuff that everyone faces, but we know we've got tools in our toolkits, and that's why we've done this, right? To share them,
mhm.
to make them available to everyone else. And yeah, any
Yeah.
final words, Tanya? Otherwise, we'll wind it up.
No, look, no final words, but I do love sharing these tools because they're
Yeah.
just super, super powerful. And so I'm really keen to hear how everyone goes when they start using these tools. Please share with us. We'd love to hear.
Very much so, very much so. And next time it's Tanya's turn to decide the topic, so we'll see what you come up with.
Watch out.
uh, Thank you as always. Thank you for listening, people. Be sure to subscribe because that helps us. We're teeny, but we're growing. And
Yes.
can't wait to bring you another episode very soon.
Thanks, Brenda. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.